3 spine-chilling au pair. Stories revealed, the sinister secrets that haunt the unexplained. Sarah had no idea what she was stepping into when she moved from her small-town Midwestern life to the seemingly perfect suburb north of Chicago. The Baxter home was a postcard come to life. Lush gardens bursting with color under the summer sun, children's laughter ringing through the air. But something about the place felt off, like a chill that lingers after a sudden gust of wind. It was a chance for a new beginning, or so she thought. Little did she know, darkness was simmering just below the surface. From the moment Sarah arrived, she was enchanted by Lucy and Ben, bright-eyed, giggling siblings who lit up the room. But as day turned to night, the laughter echoed differently in the corners of the house, morphing into a weird, uneasy silence that wrapped around her. Strange symbols were carved into the kids' toys, runes, or something that looked like it. It felt like a child's game, but it unsettled her. Night after night she struggled to shake the feeling that the house was alive, breathing softly but insistently when shadows danced around the rooms. Then there were the parents, tight smiles stretched too wide on their lips, laughter bursting out of context like cheap fireworks. One moment they were hugging their kids. The next, their eyes darted around like a deer caught in headlights. The air felt thick, and every glance exchanged at the dinner table was loaded with something Sarah couldn't quite grasp. She was new here, an outsider, but whispers surrounded her like fog, tales of a family who had vanished without a trace, lost to time and memory. As Sarah paced the quiet, manicured streets while pushing a stroller with Lucy and Ben, she overheard neighbors talking, hushed tones accompanied by glances her way. "Don't go near the Baxter home at night," one neighbor said, her face pale. "That's when the whispers start." Sarah's heart raced. It was just a house, right? But something gnawed at the back of her mind, prickling the hair on her arms. Then came the night she found Lucy and Ben in their bedroom, whispering in soft, eerily perfect unison, faces lit dimly by a nightlight. "They're coming for us." Their small voices echoed in a haunting nursery rhyme, something wrong in the innocence of it all. Their backs were turned to her, silhouettes twisted in the low light. Fear gripped Sarah as she stood frozen, a shiver running down her spine. What was she caught up in? What had she opened herself up for? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The moment stretched, filled with unspoken dread. The air grew colder. The laughter outside changed, muffled now, a ripple of something sinister, unseen, waiting. Sarah felt trapped, heart racing against the walls of the Baxter home. As the ashen gleam of the moon dripped through the windows, she sensed that every moment teetered on the edge of horror. Then came a midnight knock, a sharp, sudden rap that shattered the silence. Panic flooded Sarah as a frigid breeze swept through the house, bringing with it the distant sound of laughter, echoing the innocent chants of Lucy and Ben. With icy fingers clutching her heart, she approached the door, unsure if she could face the truth hidden beyond it. Who stood waiting in the darkness? And more importantly, what secrets did this pristine suburban facade hide that might bind her to its fate forever? The knock echoed again, sharper this time, a demand laced with impatience. Sarah's hand trembled above the doorknob, a wild weight thrumming in the air around her. Her heart pounded, each beat clamoring for action, but her body felt like cement, rooted to the spot. What lurked outside? She could feel the weight of the still house pressing down, binding her with dread. "Who is it?" she barely managed to ask, her voice quivering with uncertainty. She expected the kids to answer, perhaps some phantom of innocence to draw her back into the warmth of their laughter. Instead, a chill gust swept through the narrow crack when she opened the door just a sliver. The night enveloped her like a thick fog, chilling her to the bone. Standing on the other side was a figure draped in darkness. The streetlight illuminated just enough to reveal a pale, dreadful face, framed by unkempt hair that streamed down like tendrils of shadow. It was an unsettling sight, sending a rush of adrenaline through her veins. "Let me in," the voice croaked, an unnatural rasp that made dread coil in her stomach. Who are you?" What kind of strange game was being played here? The figure's lips curled into a sickening grin that didn't reach its hollow eyes. "They called me here," it breathed, leaning closer, invading Sarah's space with an unnatural aura. She recoiled, panic smashing against her heart as her instinct screamed to close the door. But part of her felt drawn to it like moth to flame. Without thinking, Sarah yanked the door shut. It slammed against the frame, but the moment gave her little solace. The laughter of Lucy and Ben drifted through the silence like an eerie afterthought, a harmonious echo wrapped in malice. They weren't protecting her, they were complicit. "Sarah," they called, their voices a cacophony of urgency. "Come play with us." "What game?" she shouted back, desperation clawing at her. "What's going on?" As their response melted into sinister giggles, fatigue weighed her down. The tension was unbearable, reality bending in on itself. She felt drawn again, almost against her will, to the soft thud of their footsteps scampering toward her. The walls felt like they were closing in, shadows thickening, pulsating with every breath. Then their faces appeared at the doorway, bright and wide-eyed. "You have to come!" Ben exclaimed, pointing to the darkness beyond their room. He seemed too excited, too eager. "It's just over there! Stop it!" Sarah could feel panic bubbling up, threatening to boil over. "What is it?" "That," Lucy chimed, her finger directing towards the corner of the landing. "It's waiting for you, Sarah. It knows you are here." Instinct kicked in. She backed away from that doorway, her mind racing. What was waiting? Was it the figure who knocked? Or was it something more sinister threaded through the very walls of the Baxter home? "I need to get out," Sarah thought, the desperation now tangible, glaring at her. "I can't stay here." But the sound of the wind shifted outside, foreboding, whispering her name through the darkness. In that chilling moment, she felt the entire house call out to her, pulling her deeper. What if the true horror of the Baxter home was waiting for her to discover, lurking beyond what she could see? As Sarah's back pressed against the wall, she knew it was only the beginning. The comforting facade had transformed. She felt a loss of control, confusion flooding her senses. And then, on the cusp of turning to flee, a shadow darted across the landing, leaving a trace of icy fear in its wake. The door to the kids' room creaked open wider, inviting her into the unknown. What ancient bond tied her fate to this nightmare? As she stood there, trembling, everything shimmered with a malignant promise. She had to know. But at what cost? Outside, the wind howled, the figure's voice merging with the children's giggles, soft yet sinister. The whispers had begun anew, echoing through the hallways, and Sarah felt the pull of her chilling destiny gathering strength. What awaited her in the depths of this house, where every shadow felt alive? Each step she would take could lead to salvation or doom. The shadows writhed around her, a living tapestry of dread. Sarah felt the pull tugging at her, once an insistent whisper, now escalating into a siren's call. Every nerve in her body urged her to run, to flee and leave this forsaken place behind. Yet, as she stood stone still, she could almost hear the house breathing. "Come play with us." The words echoed eerily, twining through her thoughts like ivy, creeping into her mind. She turned her gaze toward the children, still waiting at the doorway, their eyes impossibly wide, reflecting something dark and unknowable. Ben grinned, that same eager smile plastered across his face. You'll be so happy once you see it." "See what?" The words slipped from her lips, heavy with disbelief. "What is waiting?" Lucy stepped into the frame, her voice low and honeyed. "It's like a game, but scarier. We promise." In the thickening silence, anxiety bubbled in Sarah, threatening to drown her. The air felt electric, charged with anticipation. Behind her, the walls seemed to press in, and somewhere in the depths of the house a floorboard creaked, a sound that rippled like a stone dropped in still water. "Sarah!" The wind howled again, this time sounding almost like a warning. She clenched her fists, the nails biting into her palms as panic welled within her, raw and sharp. "Just take one step." The children's voices lingered like honey and poison, beckoning her into the shadows beyond the safety of the hallway. Without realizing it, she moved closer. The children giggled, but there was no joy in it, just a creeping certainty that something vile had wrapped itself around them like vines choking the very life out of their innocence. The way they twitched, shifting from foot to foot, eyes gleaming with something far removed from childhood, sent a spike of terror spiraling down her spine. As she neared the entrance to their room, a flicker of movement caught the corner of her eye. A shadow, darker than the darkness, snaked around the doorframe just behind the children, and Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. Her instincts screamed at her. This wasn't the time for childish games. With a sudden jolt of clarity, she thought of leaving, of opening the front door and running into the night, never looking back. Just the thought made her dizzy. But Lucy's voice fluttered in like a moth trapped beneath a lamp. "You can't leave, Sarah. The games are forever." The sinister chill that danced along her arms was now a creeping serpent, wrapping tighter around her throat. She felt the walls shift, echoing lonesome breaths that mixed with her own panicked gasps. The air grew cold, and a heaviness settled in, pulling at her chest like an anchor. "Let me out!" she shouted, turning to the doorway leading to the front of the house, only to see it slam shut, as if by a ghostly hand. The handle rattled violently, a mocking laughter erupting from the dark corner of the landing, the place where nothing had been there moments before. The shadows twisted, and suddenly the looming figure appeared again, closer this time. Its eyes glinted with a hungry anticipation that sent her heart racing. "I told you. They called me." "That's not true," Sarah cried out, though doubt gnawed at her like a rat in the walls. "Are you going to play?" The figure leaned forward, and the scent of decay wafted through the air, making her stomach churn. With a burst of raw instinct, she stepped back, and the children lurched forward as if on strings. "No, you have to join us," they yelled in unison, their voices ringing like chimes struck by a dark wind. In that moment, she understood. It wasn't only the children who were being held captive. The house itself had a life, a hunger that thrived in fear. The realization jolted her into action. "I won't let you take me," she screamed, shoving against the wall of darkness and rushing past the kids, her heart pounding like a funeral drum. But just as she reached the foot of the stairs, the shadows merged, blocking her path. The laughter of the children twisted into something monstrous, a chorus of despair, ringing deadly clear. "You made your choice." With nowhere left to turn, Sarah felt the tendrils of darkness snake around her ankles, pulling her down. What choice did she really have? A voice echoed in the suffocating dark. "It's time to play, Sarah." Through the oppressive veil of fear, she fought to grasp the remnants of her will, but the house had begun to ripple, to sway, threatening to swallow her whole. Desperation surged within her as she made one last move, her breath hitching anew. Just one step toward the truth, or your doom. This was only the beginning, and the house had its plans. Little did she know, the game was far from over. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah plunged deeper into the suffocating darkness. The shadows twisted around her legs, tugging with a force that felt all too alive, like 1,000 hands trying to drag her back. She stumbled, heart racing, and fought against the weight of despair that enveloped her. "Help us!" Begging voices echoed in a dissonant chorus, fusing the children's innocent tones with something more sinister, more demanding. She hoped desperately to run, but the air was thick as syrup, pulling at her limbs. They promised happiness. How could this be? It wasn't just a game, it was a trap. Every instinct screamed at her to get out, to escape the clutches of the house where nightmare and reality morphed into one grotesque entity. But then came a sliver of light. Just ahead, a dim glow flickered like a beacon. She bolted toward it, a threadbare hope stitching together her resolve. The shadows grasped and twisted, trying to pull her back into their dark embrace, but she willed her feet to move faster. "Don't leave us, Sarah." Ben's voice rang out again, sharper now, tinged with a malevolence that made her recoil. She shot a glance over her shoulder, the sight almost sending her reeling. The children were distorted, their faces pulled into grotesque smiles that spoke of hunger rather than joy. Their eyes, voids of despair and something darker, begged and threatened all at once. She turned forward again, and the light intensified, revealing a door she hadn't noticed before. The wood was weathered, worn down over years, but it stood apart from the surrounding gloom, beckoning her. But just as she reached for the handle, temptation coiled around her heart. The laughter, the children's laughter, rose again, now mingled with a chorus of spectral whispers that seemed to seep through the very walls. Stay, play, forever. The door creaked slowly open, the sound echoing like a death knell through the tension-filled air. It revealed a small room. Dust motes danced in the dying light, creating an almost surreal atmosphere. It was barren except for a small table in the center, upon which lay a deck of cards, worn and smeared with something dark. Blood. A chill seized her as she stepped inside, the door behind her slamming shut with a slam that reverberated through her bones. She spun around, panic clawing at her throat. But the door wouldn't budge. The walls vibrated ominously, and the laughter outside crescendoed into discordant madness. "Play with us." The sound drowned her thoughts. Feeling the cold sweat trickle down her spine, Sarah snapped her head back to the room. The cards glimmered under the flicker of what little light remained, as if alive, as if they watched her. She stepped closer, compelled by some unseen force. Her fingers brushed against the edges. A card flipped over like a pivot in her destiny. The Joker. What the hell did that mean? The air grew electric, thickening with anticipation. A new voice slithered into her mind, deeper, darker. "Choose wisely, Sarah. Fortune and fear are but two sides of the same coin." With a racing heart and hastily drawn breath, she looked around. Shadows began to swirl with malicious intent, inching ever closer, waiting for her to falter. Time felt suspended, as if the very air conspired against her. This was no longer just a game. The stakes were high, and the rules twisted. "Oh, do you dare to play?" The haunting whisper danced through the air, saturating her thoughts. The children's eyes widened with a hunger that made her pulse quicken. What would she risk next? What unspeakable horror awaited her? Trembling, she reached for another card, her heart pounding like a drum, echoing the encroaching darkness. The laughter of the children faded, leaving only an abyss of silence and her own mounting dread. That final choice loomed before her like a precipice. But as she clenched the edge of the card, she realized this wasn't just play. What had she truly summoned? The moment Sarah flipped the card, a low rumbling filled the room. It came from the depths of the house, the dark walls shuddering as if resonating with something malevolent. Her heart slammed against her chest, each beat a countdown to something dreadful. The Joker lay before her, mocking and enigmatic. What had she summoned with this simple gesture? Play! The whisper curled around her like smoke, seductive and foreboding. All games promise something. What will you sacrifice? A chill wound through her fingers, tightening around the edge of the card, and she felt it, an unmistakable urge. The need to know. With trembling hands, she turned the card over. The Ace of Spades. A pulse of darkness radiated from it, filling the air with a suffocating weight. Shadows danced like a macabre ballet, their forms growing more distinct, more threatening. She stumbled back, her breath hitching. Claw-like hands began to emerge from the walls, long fingers stretching toward her, hungry for her warmth and spirit. "What do you want?" Her voice broke, thin and shaky. The laughter surged, a symphony of glee and cruelty. "We want to play, Sarah." The walls seemed to breathe with the children's voices. She pressed herself against the door, desperate to feel the cold, solid wood beneath her. "No more! I want out!" "Out?" The word echoed, laden with mockery. "It's not your turn, Sarah." The shadows solidified, forming grotesque shapes that mimicked the children. They reached with their twisted little hands, their faces stretching impossibly wide into grins that dripped with malice. She recognized them. These were the children she used to babysit, their innocent faces warped now by despair and something darker. They hadn't just been lost. They had been consumed. "Sacrifice your fear, your sorrow," they sang in unison, their eyes glowing red with an otherworldly fire. "And join us." "No!" An instinctual scream tore from her throat as she wrenched her gaze back to the cards. They were her only chance. She had to break the spell. Sarah slammed her palm on the Ace of Spades. "I'm not afraid." The card shuddered beneath her hand, lightning fast. The shadows recoiled, shrieking, a chorus of wails that pierced her ears and vibrated in her skull. Light erupted from the card, flaring like a sudden sunrise, forcing the darkness to retreat. But the laughter transformed into a discordant harmony, echoing all around her as the shadows regrouped, pulling back into the corners of the room. "What have you done?" The children stared at her, anger and disappointment twisting their faces into masks of fury. "You should have played." The brightness engulfed her now, swallowing everything in its wake. She closed her eyes, praying for escape. The incessant noise fading, replaced by a calm that felt both liberating and chilling. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself standing in the middle of an entirely different room. The air was stale, filled with dust and secrets. Old photographs lined the walls, sepia-toned faces grinning eerily back at her. But one photograph caught her eye. It was her from years before, standing with the children who once haunted her. Empty frames hung crookedly, as if they too were trying to escape the grasp of something unseen. The energy shifted, anxiety prickling her skin. Something was wrong here, and she could feel it crawling beneath the surface. The flicker of light overhead dimmed again, and her breath caught. "Did you think you were free, Sarah?" The sinister whisper swept through the room, curling around her like a predator closing in on its prey. Panic flared in her chest. "What are you?" "Just a choice away," it replied, the shadows inching closer, looming like dark sentinels. A doorway appeared across the room, barely illuminated. The choice was clear: escape or deeper into madness. But which was the real trap? Sarah's heart thundered in her ears, drowning out the laughter echoing through her mind. What had she truly unleashed? Facing the doorway, she hesitated. She had to choose again. What lay behind it? Was it salvation or further torment? With every second ticking away, she reached for the door on shaky legs, but would she survive the next decision? She pushed the door open, its creaking hinges echoing through the vacant room, sending shivers down her spine. The faint light spilled out like a ghost, beckoning her forward. Each step into the corridor felt like stepping through a veil, a threshold to something worse than she could imagine. The air here was heavier, thick with the scent of decay and something sour. As she passed through, the door slammed shut behind her, the sound reverberating like a death knell. Panic rose again, clawing at her throat. Shadows darted at the corners of her vision, slithering just out of reach. Her pulse quickened, a drumroll for the horror to come. "Sarah!" The murmured chant wrapped around her, disembodied but intimate, as if the walls themselves were speaking directly to her. She turned, searching the dim corridor for the source, but found only her reflection in a cracked mirror hanging crookedly. The reflection stared back with wild eyes, a face she barely recognized. Beneath her skin, fear pulsed, alive and demanding. Suddenly the air grew cold, a frigid breath against her neck. The whispers morphed into desperate cries from the shadows. "Help us! Set us free!" The noise increased, an agonizing cacophony that filled her with dread. These were not just the children she once knew. They were trapped souls, locked in this nightmare. She pressed forward, drawn by the sound, but terrified of what lay ahead. The corridor stretched endlessly, flickering lights overhead revealing more portraits, their faces warped into expressions of horror. An old grandfather clock ticked deliberately, each tick a reminder of the passing time, of life slipping away. In the distance, a door stood ajar, light spilling out as if something alive flickered inside. Sarah hesitated only for a moment before hurtling toward it, urged on by the haunting cries. She couldn't leave them trapped, could she? As she approached, a wind howled past her, slamming the door wide, the force nearly knocking her back. She gasped, but stepped inside. The room was expansive, illuminated by an unnatural light that pulsed like a heartbeat. It was filled with strange artifacts, old dolls with cracked porcelain faces, rusty toys that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. At the center was a table, draped with a dark cloth. Sarah moved closer, the whispers intensifying. She could feel them vibrating through her, their desperate energy a jarring echo in her bones. The arrangement on the table made her stomach churn. Old cards, their edges frayed, and an ominous deck that seemed to bear the weight of countless lost souls. "Play our game," the voices begged. "Choose wisely." "Why?" she pleaded. "What do you want from me?" "Join us," they echoed in eerie harmony, "or lose yourself forever." She recoiled, shaking her head, terror flooding her veins. Dozens of eyes peered from the corners, glimmering with the faintest hint of hope. Or was it desperation? In that moment, a choice unfolded before her. Did she dare touch the cards, risking everything, or would she turn back and face the haunting darkness behind her? The clock ticked louder, urgency heavy in the air. The echoes pushed at her, clawing for attention. Your fear is your greatest weapon. Play or abandon us. What if this choice led to an even more unsettling fate? The weight of the moment pressed down, a question hanging in the balance. Her hands trembled, the decision tightening like a noose around her throat. To play or not to play? What waited on the other side could be salvation, or her final downfall. And what if she stepped too far into the shadows? Heart racing, she reached for the cards. The moment her fingers brushed the worn surface, a jolt of electricity surged through her, sending a violent shudder rolling through her body. It felt as though unseen hands gripped her tightly, pulling her deeper into the room's oppressive embrace. "Good choice," a voice hissed, cold and gleeful, weaving through the labyrinth of her mind. "Now, let the game unfold." The cards vibrated, as if alive, and one flipped over, revealing a grotesque illustration of a child, wide-eyed and screaming. The child's mouth opened in a silent scream that echoed in her gut. Suddenly, the air thickened, and dark shapes swirled around her, creeping closer. "Draw another!" The whispers surged, rising and falling like waves. "You must—" "No!" she shouted, panic igniting in her chest. She clutched the table, her knuckles white from tension. The figures above her smiled, their expressions twisted in cruel anticipation. A sudden burst of wind erupted, extinguishing every flicker of light in the room. In that suffocating darkness, her breath came in frantic gasps. A sound like desperate laughter echoed around her, taunting, relentless. "Draw, or we shall take you instead." It was a chorus of anguish and delight, a chilling tango that sent icy fingers down her spine. She was losing her grip on reality. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but where? The door was gone, swallowed by the shadows that were now swirling with feral delight. Her heart thrashed violently against her ribcage. "Sarah!" The voices coiled around her, soft and sickly sweet. "Join us, before the game ends." In a frenzy, she swung her hand out blindly, knocking the remaining cards off the table. They scattered across the floor like fallen leaves, but instead of crumpling, they began to pulse and hum, glowing dimly in the dark, and the figures in the corners grew restless, inching closer. Faces formed in the shadows, pain etched in their features, silent screams drawn into their mouths. Play or perish. There is no escape. In desperation, she dropped to her knees, clutching the scattered cards, trying to rearrange the chaotic images. The anxiety spiraled. She recalled the faces of her childhood friends, laughter, innocence ripped from them too soon. But those faces were now replaced with the darkness around her. "Remember us." The shadows twisted, showing fleeting glimpses of their torment. It was a cruel reminder of the past. She could almost see their desperate eyes, pleading for salvation. "Choose, Sarah," they screamed. "It hurts, it never stops." The walls pressed in on her, thickening like the weight of collective suffering. Each whisper drummed in her ears, vibrating, demanding attention, their cries escalating toward a deafening climax. "Sarah, Sarah, draw!" Suddenly a flicker of warmth radiated through her, the remnants of a spark of hope within that terrifying abyss. With trembling hands, she picked up one last card. She could either abandon the game, risking their wrath, or confront the force that claimed them. Her breath hitched as she turned it over. It was an image of a key, shimmering and golden, promising freedom. But freedom in what way? "Will you unlock it?" they demanded, their eyes now black voids of despair. As shadows surged forward, she realized whatever she chose now wouldn't just bind her to a fate. It would redefine her very existence. Was it the key to salvation or the doorway to hell? Before she could make her choice, the room around her began to tremble, a deep rumbling in the very foundations. What lay beyond that card? The moment hung in the air like a noose, ready to tighten. And then the whispers changed again, becoming sharper, suffused with dread. Once you know, there's no turning back. What awaited her on the other side of that card? What thin lines separated her from damnation? As darkness closed in around her, the choice had never been clearer. Standing on the precipice of unimaginable terror, Sarah knew that whatever lay ahead might not just haunt her, but consume her entirely. The room shuddered, the vibrations crawling through Sarah's bones. She clutched the key card, her heart racing. The whispers rose to a fevered pitch, clawing at her sanity. "Unlock it! Unlock it!" they chanted, a symphony of dread tethered to her very soul. "No!" Her voice cracked, desperation spilling from her mouth. She was teetering on a precipice, the walls closing in like a vice. She could feel the shadows lurking, hungry for her terror, eager to consume her. Her pulse thrummed in her ears, drowning out the chaos around her, a relentless reminder of everything she stood to lose. If she unlocked it, would it mean freedom or a worse fate? With a sudden impulse, she gripped the corner of the card. Her fingers slick with sweat as she held it up, the shimmering surface glinting ominously in the void. A chill raced up her spine, the air thickening with anticipation. The laughter began again, a grotesque symphony of delight from unseen mouths. "Choose, Sarah," they growled, their voices dripping with malice. "You have so little time." The shadows circled her, encasing her in a net of writhing darkness. She could almost see their empty eyes fixed on her, 1,000 souls wailing in torment. Her mind twisted, recalling the fate of those who had played before her. Would she join them? Was this the end of her fight, or simply the beginning of a dark descent? "Enough!" she screamed into the churning void, her voice commanding the hatred that enveloped her. "I will not be another pawn!" A silence fell, heavy like lead, and for a breathless moment the darkness paused, tangled, as if caught off guard. Then came a whisper, soft but insistent. "You dare defy us?" "Maybe I do." Her resolve surged, igniting a fire within her that pushed back against the shadows. Holding the keycard aloft, she felt a surge of power coursing through her veins, thrilling and terrifying all at once. "Unlock it!" they demanded, an order wrapped in venomous zeal. But that power was intoxicating, blurring the line between control and chaos. With a deep inhale, she flipped the card to face the horde of shadows, her wide eyes daring them to act, to reveal their true form. "What lies beyond?" she whispered, feeling the enormity of her choice. There was a flicker of hesitation in the air, as if the very fabric of darkness awaited the implications of her next move. In an instant, the dark shapes wavered, their faces momentarily flickering with confusion. Then, with a guttural roar, they surged forward, ready to reclaim what they believed was theirs. Reality itself warped around Sarah. The walls seemed to ripple, and what had been a sealed prison now opened wide, like a gaping maw. Her breath caught in her throat as gusts of frigid air rushed past her, a wave of despair crashing against her. "Unlock it! Unlock it!" the shadows screamed, their wailing now a cacophony of anguish, pulsating like a heart in torment. And then she did it. With a lurch of her heart, she slammed the keycard down against the table. "Unlocking!" a voice hissed, the sound reverberating through the room, echoing like thunder. The air thickened, charged with electricity. A golden light exploded from the card, bright and blinding, as arcane symbols twisted and looped above her head, forming a gateway. The shadows shrieked, their cries turning to howls of desperation. She felt herself being pulled into the light and out of sight of the looming darkness. What awaited her on the other side? Would it be salvation or an abyss more profound? But before she could think, the shadows lunged, tendrils reaching to grab her, to pull her back. "Don't leave us!" The agony in their voices ignited a spark of fear in her chest. The light rotated, swirling like a whirlpool. Sarah was caught in its vortex, yanked mercilessly toward the very heart of that golden glimmer. The last thing she heard was their fading, infuriated cries before everything dissolved into searing brilliance. Then silence, and in that void of nothingness, Sarah realized she had crossed a line. But where had she gone? What fate awaited her now? Blinking against the afterglow, she found herself standing in a new place, one that felt all too familiar. What twisted game had she entered now? As the shadows began to reform around her, she steeled herself for the horrors that waited. What she had unlocked went far beyond the original game, and its consequences would reverberate through her very soul. What had she truly unleashed? The ground beneath Sarah shivered, a shifting landscape of grey and despair. She stood in a dimly lit corridor, dressed in shadows, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. Her heart thudded loudly in her chest, a primal beat screaming at her to flee. But where could she go? The slim walls seemed to close in, trapping her in this uncanny space that felt eerily similar to the very place she had fled. "Welcome back!" A rasp echoed from the end of the hall. The voice was familiar yet wrong, each syllable dripping with contempt. It sent a chill racing up her spine. That voice, it sounded like her own. How could it be? "Who's there?" she croaked, her voice trembling as it escaped her lips. She peered into the darkness, straining to see a figure forming amidst the curling shadows. "Did you think you could escape us?" the voice mocked, wrapping around her like a sinister embrace. "None of us ever leave." Panic surged through her veins as memories clawed at her consciousness. The others who had faced the shadows before her. Their screams echoed in her head, a horrific reminder of her reality. She had become a part of this twisted cycle, and now the game was far from over. The corridor warped, flickering with a dim, ghostly light that seemed to illuminate her worst fears. Faces appeared in the walls, anguished and desperate, pressing against the surface. Their mouths moved, but she couldn't hear their pleas. Their eyes, wide and sorrowful, burrowed deep into her soul. She recognized one of them. It was Julia, a girl from her past who had been swallowed by this very nightmarish realm. "Sarah, help us!" Julia's face twisted with anguish, her features contorted but still recognizable. "You can't let this be the end. You're our last hope." Hope. Sarah's heart sank. "What can I do? I'm trapped." "Unlock the truth," the voice of shadows murmured, seductive and terrifying. "Find the key within." The urge to flee contained all the willpower she could muster, but the way back was obscured by a wall of despair, thick and suffocating. She backed away, each step heavy with dread. The whispers grew louder, merging into a cacophony of voices demanding she listen, urging her to confront what lay ahead. "Unlock the truth," they taunted, mocking her fear like a game. "Why do you torment me?" Sarah cried out, her voice breaking. "What do you want?" "Only your surrender," they hissed in unison. "Only your despair. You think you walked away, but your fate is sealed." With a surge of unexpected rage, she grasped for that lingering sense of control. "I won't give in," she yelled. "I refuse to be your pawn." From the depths of her defiance, a flicker of golden light erupted around her again, illuminating the corridor. The touch of warmth was intoxicating, driving her forward into the swirling darkness. She focused hard, willing the brightness to dispel the dread that gripped her. "Face us then," the shadows snarled, the walls vibrating with their fury. With a newfound will, she pressed onward, embracing the crushing weight of fear. She would confront the darkness, confront the truths buried deep. She reached into her pocket, fingers brushing against something cool and smooth, the key card. "Unlock the truth," she whispered, holding it tightly. It pulsed with energy, throbbing in harmony with her heartbeat. The shadows screamed in agony, their howls echoing through the void. Will the light be her salvation or her doom? As she stepped deeper into the depths of the corridor, she felt her control slip, the air thickening around her. What waited for her at the end? What ultimate truth would she uncover? And as the walls closed in, she realized she wasn't just unlocking a door. She was unlocking herself. But what horrors would she become once the truth was laid bare? Chaos surged. Would she stand against it, or risk losing everything? As Sarah approached the end of the corridor, she could feel a tension crackling in the air, thick and heavy. The shadows shifted uneasily around her, echoing the questions swirling in her mind. What lay beyond this door? Would she discover freedom? Or perhaps the final piece of her very own despair? Her heart thudded in her chest, each beat a relentless reminder of the stakes. She raised the key card before her, its golden sheen reflecting the flickering light, illuminating the way forward. The shadows writhed and twisted in response, a chorus of protest blending together into a monstrous cacophony. "Don't do it, you'll regret it," they screeched. Ignoring their cries, she pressed forward, each step bringing her closer to the door that loomed ahead. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her in a frenzy of sound and fury. They bled together, past voices intertwining with the present, blending into one haunting memory that was all too familiar. "Sarah, help us." Julia's voice cut through the noise, a plea laced with desperation. "Don't let them win." "Be strong, Sarah," echoed another voice, one she couldn't place but recognized as coming from somewhere deep within her heart. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath, gathering courage that felt as fragile as glass. "I'm not afraid," she shouted defiantly, the words bursting from her like a shield against the encroaching shadows. She stepped forward, reaching out for the doorknob, feeling warmth emanating from the keycard as it thrummed with life. "Unlock it!" the shadows hissed, clamoring in a tempest of rage and fear. The laughter morphed into howls, discordant and chilling, a stark contrast to the golden glow radiating from her hand. With one swift motion, she turned the knob and pushed the door open. Light poured into the darkened corridor, flooding her senses with warmth and brightness. The shadows recoiled, their party broken as the light expanded, swirling around Sarah like a comforting embrace. She stepped over the threshold into the room beyond. What lay before her was a barren expanse, yet it was peaceful. The walls were lined with mirrors that reflected her surroundings, yet offered no path back to the darkness she had escaped. The air was devoid of anger and fear, replaced instead by a profound silence. While her eyes adjusted, she felt a presence comforting and grounding. "Welcome home, Sarah," it whispered, resonating within her spirit like familiar music. "You've chosen to face your fears. Now, embrace the truth." In the mirrors, visions began to emerge. Glimpses of her life danced across the surfaces, childhood laughter, family gatherings, moments of joy and sorrow. Each scene morphed and shifted, revealing parts of herself she had left behind, lost to time and shadows. She could see Julia again, vibrant and smiling, surrounded by light. "You can help others," Julia encouraged her, her voice flowing like a gentle stream. "You can free us. But first, you have to let go of your fear." Suddenly, the mirrors darkened, and a weight pressed down on Sarah, a reminder of the children lost, the echoes of the cries that had haunted her for so long. The shadows behind her stirred, sensing her hesitance, their fingers clutching at the fringes of her resolve. "No," she cried, shifting her focus back to the warmth, to the images of hope reflected around her. The truth flooded in. She held within her the power to change fate, not just for herself, but for all those who had been lost in the darkness. "I refuse to let fear win," she declared, her voice firm and resolute. "I will uncover my strength and break this cycle." With renewed purpose, she stepped closer to the nearest mirror, feeling the warmth pull her in. The faces of the children emerged once more, now clearer, hopeful instead of tortured. "You can do it," they chanted, encouraging her. The reflections shimmered, a portal opening as she extended her hand, determined to set them free. "Let's break these chains together," she urged, her heart swelling with fierce love and compassion. As her hand touched the reflective surface, a surge of energy erupted. Light exploded around her, washing over the shadows like a cleansing wave. The darkness shrieked, a chaotic sound of rage expanding and curling inward as the light consumed it. With a blinding flash, she felt a connection, threads of fate unraveling as the children and lost spirits surged toward her, their identities returning like waves crashing upon a distant shore. "Thank you!" they cried, their spirits unshackled from the anguish. The burdens lifted from her heart, a pure joy flooding her as she stood in the momentum of liberation. Suddenly, she was back in her own world, the shadows of the Baxter home fading into the past. Standing in the sunlight, Sarah breathed deeply, each inhale tinged with hope. She was free. But even in the light, shadows lingered at the edges of her mind, reminding her that darkness is never truly conquered. It waits, patient and relentless, reminding everyone that the battle is constant. As she turned to walk away, she held her head high, knowing what strength lay in embracing her fears. She had faced the abyss, and now she could help others do the same. Some games may never end, but those playing them could choose to shine brighter. And as she took her steps into the future, one thing resonated in her heart. She would never play the game of darkness again. If you loved this wild ride and want to experience more heart-pounding stories like this, you need to subscribe immediately. You don't want to miss the next exclusive story that's coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the energy going. Flood the comment section with your thoughts and theories about the ending. Let's hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this conclusion. Your support matters, and only true fans like you understand the power behind subscribing and engaging. Let's keep this incredible community alive.